Over the past 30 years, I have served 4 congregations, various parts of this country, and during those years, I've made some observations about High Holy Days. Disciples are really Johnny-come-lately to liturgy that has to do with holy days, and so I find, or at least it would be my observation in those 4 churches, one of those being this church, that many of our services have some differences on Advent Sundays or a Christmas Eve service, or it might be a Pentecost service, that there are variations that are notable in our churches. But one that is dominant throughout my experience of these 4 congregations has been an All Saints service, where for almost everyone in those congregations, All Saints is a very, very important Sunday, and where the service is very much the same across the board in our churches. A time of reflection upon, a time of thinking about those who have faithfully impacted our lives and the life of the world. A time of searching out what it means to be a saint. I had an interesting story about that yesterday, or the day before yesterday. I did a service for a second cousin, a woman who passed away. She was in Fort Worth, and her home was in northwest Illinois, and so I had an opportunity to spend the day in my brother's vehicle riding back and forth to Sterling, Illinois, which is way up by Moline. And during that time, it gave me a chance to chat with my brother's wife, who is youngest brother, who has married a woman who is Jewish, if you can imagine that in the middle of a cornfield in Illinois. But she is Jewish, and she's also a new citizen of the United States. She's from Colombia. And I was telling her a little bit about this service, and she asked me, she said, well, what is a saint? And so I began the kind of rote response that some of us who are younger traditions offer. Well, a saint, in the Bible is a person who is faithful, who is, a person of faith. And that spurred me to think a little bit about the historical tradition of sainthood. And then I got to thinking about, well, in early Roman Catholicism, and even to today, a saint is one that is revered, one who has given sacrificially of his or her life, one who has given of him or herself in such a way that it's really notable. One who is dedicated and committed to God in such a way that you couldn't miss how it was they lived out their journey of faith. And then I flipped that back on my statement to Maxine, and I began to think about how sometimes those of us who are disciple probably think pretty cavalierly about what it means to be a saint. Anybody who shows up. Or sometimes not even shows up. Is it possible for Christians to become too comfortable? Somehow, perhaps because of the din of the culture we live in, to become so comfortable that we would not remember the costliness of our faith. Now, let me transition. We are a church that has claimed that spirituality, in particular Christian spirituality is a part of our vision, deepening that and becoming a person who is more intimately connected to the maker of the universe and to the world around us and to one another. Love of God and love of neighbor. And in doing that, many of us have practiced new forms of spirituality that have come to us perhaps in recent years. For some of you who have taken Faith Leader or been a part of a whole variety of prayer groups around here, you know what those disciplines are about, don't you? First quiz of the sermon. What are some of those disciplines? Spiritual disciplines. I see those of you who have taken Faith Leader, oh gosh, you would ask. Prayer. What kind of prayers? Breath prayers. Thank you. Breath prayers. Lectio. The Jesus prayer. Solitude. What it means to be centered in a God in silence. Learning to pray for discernment, so it's just not our own gut that we're relying upon to make decisions in life, but truly trying to sort out and listen for the voice of God. A spirituality that has depth to it, that has meaning to it, that really guides us in our daily journey of faith. Ways of disciplining ourselves and deepening those relationships. But how do you test those disciplines? How do we test them? How do we know that we're not just praying into the ether? Perhaps we should ask ourselves what the outcomes are, as the church has done for generations and generations. And that's where the saints come to mind. Saints faithfully live out the characteristics of the words that you heard from your gospel this day. The words that were spoken by Jesus on a hill, on a mount. Those teachings of Jesus that are not just taken to heart, but are given legs and wings of mission and service in the world. Let me ask one more thing of you. Some of you named particular saints as we lit candles, recognizing them, memorializing them. I want each of you, for just a moment, to think of one saint in your life, just one. One saint that positively impacted the journey upon which you walk this day. And then I want you to overhear the words of Jesus in your gospel. Happy are those who are poor in spirit. Where the translation is happiness. Happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are those that mourn. Happy are the meek. Happy are those that hunger and thirst for that which is right. Happy are those that bring peace. Happy are those persecuted for those things which are right. Happy are those that live persecution as they proclaim the gospel. Superimpose those characteristics over the name of that saint. You see, my friends, the test of our spirituality isn't found in a prayer closet although necessary, a necessary component in terms of deepening relationships with the world and God, that is not what it's about. That which is necessary, the testing of our spirituality, is a life that is fully lived for God and for others. It is a life that exemplifies Jesus and follows Jesus. Here for Life. Our campaign theme, Here for Life, reflects that kind of discipleship, that kind, if you will, of sainthood, as we share generously with the world for the sake of God's kingdom. A kingdom past, a kingdom present, and a kingdom to come. Blessings and peace as you and I engage in that type of saintly living. Kate Myers has a few words for us this morning.